What is up, my podcast peeps? Missed you guys so much. You're so near and dear to my heart, every single one of you, with all this love you keep sending us every week through the mailbags. Love it. I feel the love. I feel the energy. So missed you guys. 2 week layoff. Last time you saw us, we were doing the myfantasysportstalk.com fantasy league draft. A lot of fun for all of us. I really haven't even gone back and recapped everything myself because it gets right back into football season. So here we are. We're in the middle of it. We're through 1 week now. So a lot of things we said or did prior to the draft and our draft, now you can criticize us on, and you weren't shy about doing that either. So congrats. Love you guys. Brandon Reed here, one of your hosts for My Fantasy Podcast. I'm about to introduce you to the other host. He is now a member of the the Fantasy Sports Writers Association. Our own Dan Shaw. What up, dude? Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. And you got the name right too. So I know you had to look at it, but I appreciate it. Appreciate the love.
I did have to look. I wrote it down just to get all of it right. So FSWA. But really, seriously, congrats. So that's something that's another notch in your hat when all these crazies start throwing stuff at you. You are a recognized member of a professional group. This is not just something, a hobby. This is not something you paid $15 to join.
Yeah, no, I mean, I had to fill out an application, submit writing samples, the work that I put up on myfantasysportstalk.com, and it got reviewed, and it took about 2 months of a review process, and finally I got the word back that I guess you can say I made the cut, and now I'm, a member of the organization association, and there's some pretty esteemed members. Obviously, Matthew Berry is a member, a guy that I don't necessarily agree with a lot of what he says.
We'll get to that. That was a hot topic, Dan. You struck gold on this one when you came up with this, critiquing and picking apart his weekly assessments.
Yeah, it's also developed a strong stomach and thick skin after writing these articles, because he has a loyal following, and but
there's just as many people that think he's a little bit loony and crazy on certain things he says too, like me. I mean, of course I say.
Well, those people don't let me. Those people might not come at me with messages like the haters do, sending me terrible messages. So show me some love when I write that piece as well, and I'll continue to do it week in, week out, because he's going to be wrong 80% of the time, is usually calculated. So, but he's just a member, and we'll get into that later. But it's an honor to be a part of an association like that.
Yeah, Dan, you know as well as I do. The fans, they're fans. They read your stuff. They watch our podcast. They just don't comment all the time. The haters, they're out there in full flock, and they're the loudest. Always barking the loudest. That's just the way it works. So everybody has their detractors, and that's the way it works. But hey, can we get a shot of Dan again? Dan, say something real quick.
Hey-o.
Look at the purse rack, Dan. You got some cool purses over there. I like it. You got a pink one.
There's the pink. There's a yellow one behind it. I go out fashionably when I go out.
Y'all just look at Dan's screen real quick. He's got all the Cowboys memorabilia, all the manly sports football type things, and then just off to the side, he's got a rack full of purses.
Somewhat hit, but not really. So, yeah, I mean, here's the thing: when you live with a woman, you have to compromise. And if I compromise a back little corner for my wall of sports memorabilia, I'll do so.
Yeah, I'm surprised she even really agreed to even want to have her rack of purses in your man room there. So, but hey, yeah, I agree. 50-50, compromising. So today's show, basically what we're going to do, we got a ton of questions to get into. So we're going to do that mostly on the back end of the podcast and get to all the fantasy questions and all the heated debates. We all got hate this week. We all got hate. We kind of start with Dan with the worst and kind of, go down from there according to hatred level, whether we're red hot 5 or just yellow 3.
I had to go to church after reading that first question.
The writers should have as well. How do you take it this serious? But anyway, we'll get to that. So that's what we're going to do most of the podcast, but we also do want to get into just a few. We'll assess our draft since we didn't do that last week and missed a podcast. And we'll kind of assess our draft and talk about that. Of course, we're going to bring Orlando in here in just a second to review all the fantasy football stuff. So we'll talk about that. Some of the other things I just wanted to talk about. We're going to answer your questions, of course, but after we got a lot, I guess we got to backtrack is what I'm saying. I'm backtracking in my head. We'll kind of review our draft a little bit, maybe talk about some picks that after week one, we wish we could have taken back and didn't like. And we'll talk about some picks we're very proud of. I'm not talking about first and second round picks here. I'm talking about legitimate, you had to work for it, had to think about it, and, legitimate steal or bust in the draft, and you were just totally right or wrong. So I want to talk about that a little bit, and just maybe talk about the teams in real life, fantasy aside. After week one, who looks great? Who surprised you? Overreactions from week one, basically. Biggest surprises, biggest disappointments. So mostly fantasy football, all on the back end of the show. But let's first talk about just a little bit about the news going around in the world of sports right now, real quick on the news whip around. So, Dan, first, let me get this one out of the way with. We'll start right here because this ain't going to take long. Did you see Tony Allen was signed with the Pelicans? It took forever. Everyone in Memphis is like, what's going to eventually happen to Tony Allen? He eventually signed the contract with the Pelicans. To be honest with you, I didn't even look at it. I didn't see what the contract was, but I imagine the Pelicans got a pretty good deal in Tony Allen.
Yeah, I like the signing. It was kind of low key, under the radar. We were told by Malachi David, one of our NBA writers, so he was keeping an eye on it, but it kind of slid under the radar. I like the signing for the Pelicans. I think Tony Allen might not be as great of a perimeter defender that he was, but he's still pretty solid in the NBA, and he provides leadership. And if you can provide leadership to a DeMarcus Cousins or Anthony Davis, teaming up with a DeMarcus Cousins, I think it's only going to help their team with Drew Holiday, and they've got some other pieces. I think they're finally could be a playoff team. We've been saying that for how long, though?
Well, and we talked about also in the DeMarcus Cousins trade what they gave up, and sort of the backcourt depth that they gave up. Now they really kind of make up with that. Now, I was advocate all along of Tony Allen not starting on the Grizzlies and coming off the bench and being that defensive plug, but he just didn't provide anything offensively, and I think the Grizzlies needed to move past that. When you got the Golden State Warriors scoring, they're mark, and they're scoring 130 a game. Okay, you got to transcend with the game. So, but that, I think the Tony Allen signing really helps the Pelicans defensively, of course, and kind of shore up some of the lack of depth that they got in the DeMarcus Cousins trade. So this is 1 year. They got 1 year to probably get it done. If not, then the Twin Towers are probably going to part ways one way or the other. But it did fly under the radar. I was a little surprised about that. Now we're still waiting on JaMychal Green. So let's talk about college football real quick. That's something we haven't even touched on at all, Dan, and something I know that's fairly big. You're probably a little bit bigger college football fan than I am. You have several rooting teams, and I do, Memphis and Arkansas State, but I'm not one to really keep up with, every single game in the SEC or the Pac-12 or 11 or whatever they are now, Big 12, Big 10. On a week-to-week basis, I kind of watch some of the marquee games, and that's it, and then follow my team. So we saw Texas A&M collapse week one against a team that is going to be in my backyard this weekend. Saturday is UCLA, and that I was watching that game, Dan, and just damn, maybe the Tigers do got a really good shot here of knocking off UCLA because maybe they just ain't that good. Then
Josh Rosen took over, and that was a great game for his, not only the Bruins, but his draft stock. And that's honestly what I like about college football. I'm still kind of looking at those prospects for the draft. So he definitely helped himself. He was actually kind of lower on my board until I kind of saw him show some moxie in the pocket and show that he can lead his team back, because it was rough in the first half. That was a rough game. So if your 10-2 prediction for Memphis is going to come true, maybe this will probably be a loss, but maybe they can hang in there for a little bit. We haven't seen much of them. Wasn't their game canceled last week?
That's what I was about to mention, Dan. One of those 50-50 wins losses on my schedule was the UCF game. So that's off the schedule now. So I'm seriously looking at a 2-loss team. Probably giving you the UCLA game unless they just play inspired. Here's the problem. The Tigers are losing players on defense left and right, and they weren't very good to begin with, but they needed that glue this year to really do something. As we saw in the first game, gave up a whole lot of points. So it's going to be tough against Josh Rosen. It's going to be tough. So I'm giving that a loss, and then I'm probably giving Navy a loss. If they pull off the Navy win, or either the UCLA or the Navy win, then they're guaranteed a 2-loss season or better on the season. So we'll see what happens. That goes down Saturday, 11 a.m. ABC, the prime time game. UCLA at Memphis. Dig that. So what else from college football, Dan? You got Tennessee getting very, very lucky. Georgia going down to Notre Dame and winning a 1-point game. 1 point, not one possession, Dan. Just 1 point, not a possession.
Yeah, I was actually watching the Ohio State-Oklahoma game. Baker Mayfield looked great, beating Ohio State. A solid second half against Indiana in their first game. But their second game, I mean, JT Barrett doesn't look like he's a legit quarterback, honestly. He has the skill set of an athletic runner, but as a passer, it doesn't look like he has it. In Ohio State, they're good, solid defensively. They're good in the trenches. But if they're skill players, which Urban Meyer, recruits the best of them, if they can't perform, Ohio State's going to continue to plummet, I think, in the standings. I mean, they're not going to pile up the losses, but, Michigan at the end of the year loss, I can see them losing to a Wisconsin team that's looked pretty solid to start the year. So you never know what the future holds, but I don't like where Ohio State is right now. And Oklahoma is shooting up to number 2 in the poll. The Big 12 isn't the toughest conference, so they might have a cakewalk into the playoff. Oklahoma State is probably their biggest challenge in the Big 12.
To me, it seems like there's been some really key, early games, not playing cupcakes, and really some national clashes going on here as far as the rankings go, some really tough games. Oklahoma needed that, really. The Big 12 needed that, because the Big 12 is not really notorious for knocking off and winning big games in say, top 5 rankings. They're probably playing third fiddle, maybe fourth fiddle, traditionally over the last several years as far as conference goes. Of course, SEC being number 1, of course, who you talk to. ACC has held their own, too, with a couple of national championships since the playoff started. Then the Big 10, and then the Pac-12. So Big 12 has just kind of been lost in this, not really done much at all. So they needed that for a big win. And I honestly thought I get kind of so sick of the SEC talk around here. It's just so big. I'm in the heart of the South, but I don't really root for any SEC team. So, I get sick of the talk. And so I really kind of thought and was talking myself into Ohio State being the best team in the land because they always reload. JT Barrett, you would have thought coming back, and Urban Meyer just reloading and being Urban Meyer. I really thought they were the best team, but not so much. So I don't know. We're a couple of weeks in, and I don't know, Dan. That's my answer to you. I don't know. But a lot of fun. So glad now that football is back on every level. I spend all my Friday nights at high school football, watch some football on Saturdays when I get a chance, and then NFL on Sunday. So, but glad football's back. Any last notes on college football, Dan? Anything else?
Colorado is 2-0. They beat Colorado State and the difficult Texas State. They beat them both, and we're going to look forward to another cupcake in northern Colorado Saturday, and then we finally get into the tough Pac-12 schedule, which I'm not looking forward to. I don't think it's going to be a good year for the Buffs with their recent play against those cupcake teams.
Oh, speaking of Colorado State, they move on to play Alabama. Good luck to you. So let's talk about baseball, Dan. Let's get this out of the way with. Let's get the shame and humility out of the way with. First of all, I want you to hit on the streaks right now going on. Dodgers finally broke their losing streak, which I think was 10 or 11. Indians are still on their streak. It's a win streak. What is it, 20 now?
21. They won this afternoon. They beat the A's record. in the American League for 20 in a row, or tied it, now eclipsed it. So Indians are looking strong. Now have a better record than the Astros. Dodgers ended their streak, their losing streak, which was 11, but to me they're still the class of the NL. They played so well for so long. You're due for a streak like, a losing skid like this. I'm glad it happened to them before the playoffs started, because it was possible it could have hit in the playoffs. I think they're going to ride this out through the rest of September and be ready to play in October.
So big streaks there. Baseball is winding down. Just I guess a couple more weeks in the season, right, Dan? On average, about 12 to 15 games left for most teams.
Yeah, I think October 1st, right around there, is the last games. Obviously, we're in the home stretch of our fantasy baseball playoffs. I don't want to. That's a tough subject right now. But yes, we're closing in on the end.
We were due, Dan. We were due. Just for a little bit of history for the folks at home real quick is me and Dan have played in the championship of every fantasy league that My Fantasy Sports Talk has ever created. Okay. We thought baseball was going down the same way. Dan was the number 1 seed. He was 16-5. That's 3 games better than anyone else in the league. Guess who that second place person 3 games below him was? It was me at 13-8. But we are both getting it handed to us relentlessly. Dan, I'm trying all I can. I'm pulling out all the stops here. No loss.
Man, I'm going crazy every morning at 6 a.m. as soon as I get up, picking up my starters for the day.
That's why there's no good pitchers left.
I need them, but they're not doing anything for me. So it's Susan Bianco. I hate you.
Hey,
props to Susan. Susan's crushing me right now. I haven't even looked today. I don't even look at the scores. I just look in the morning and you get depressed before I start my day. So Susan, you're crushing my dreams.
Yeah, seriously, shout out to Susan Bianco. She tried to make several trades with me throughout the year. I beat her a couple of times, I believe. She beat me late. Been tough all year, just 1 game behind me at 12-9, but crushing you right now as the 4 seed, 463 to 384. So on my side of it, I ended up with a 3 seed. I'm playing Chad Dingus. Shout out to Chad Dingus, a.k.a. Savannah Sandnat, just relentlessly going at me. I can't catch up. What the hell? And Yu Darvish is pitching tonight, although he has slipped the last 2 games. I'll tell you this, I also hit a streak. Chris Sale just really hadn't been necessarily Chris Sale. And then a lot of my guys have been sitting, so that ain't helping. I'm losing 373 to 435 right now. We've got, till Sunday, Dan? That's it?
Yeah. We need a miracle, but maybe it can happen. Who knows?
We're both down by about 60 or so. So I'm trying my heart out. But I see what's going on now. Dan is waking up earlier on the East Coast, 6 a.m., a good 3 hours before I look at a computer and picking up all the good pitchers that are starting.
It's not helping, so it doesn't matter. It does not. It's not help. I picked up Sean Manai. He got me minus 15 points. Okay, I dropped him for a reason, and then I picked him up, and yeah, there we go.
You dropped him, and I almost picked him up the other day, and I looked at it, and I'm like, nah, so you eventually picked him up, huh?
Yeah. Well, I regret that I did. I'd be 15 points closer to Susan.
Yeah, you got to watch. That's the thing about the pitchers, negative numbers. God, dog, they could kill you. They could kill you, or they could bring you back. So we'll see what happens. Although I got Paxton coming back Friday night, and I should get at least one more good Chris Sale game in. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But big shout out, guys. Susan Bianco, Chad Dingus. I assume they're fans of the site, Dan.
Yeah. They requested to join in. They heard our pleas. I put out Facebook messages, and they replied. So they wanted to take us on, and it looks like they're going to get the better of us.
It appears that way. God, Dingus.
I wanted that streak, man. That was impressive.
So I guess are we going to play a game for 3rd place? Is that the way it's going to work, or season?
It is. So we're still going to have some competition.
We will. We'll play a championship game. It's just that championship will be for 3rd place.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's still pretty cool, I guess. If it has to go down,
especially since I'll win.
Yeah, you probably will, because I'm about to sell out. I'm about to sell out to beat Chad Dingus. I'll tell you that much right now. But okay, so that's baseball talk. We'll fill you in more about that next week, or maybe we won't. Maybe me and Dan won't give a flip, but that'll be that. So let's talk fantasy football next. You're listening to and watching My Fantasy Podcast from myfantasysportstalk.com. Thanks, guys. Been up. It seems like forever ago. It was 2 weeks ago. It was our fantasy draft. Now we're already a week into the fantasy football season. deep enough into it to get called all sorts of names by you lovely fans out there. Well, we love it. We love it. We just love the correspondence. Appreciate it. But we made predictions. We talked about it in our fantasy predictions, rankings, and everything like that leading up to our draft. And we did our draft, and we did what we thought we would do, did what we did. Now we're deep into it, so we get to talk about it, and that's the fun part. So, but first, before we can really tie a bow on this whole beginning of the NFL and fantasy football season, we got to bring in our man. We got to bring in our man from St. Ann. And this guy, I talked about some things during the fantasy preparation. I talked about, some Bengals. I talked about the Bengals being good. I picked Marvin Lewis as coach of the year. I also talked about, Andy Dalton and how you should not draft him for weeks and weeks and weeks. And our man Orlando Torres went ahead and drafted him despite my repeated warnings. Don't draft Andy Dalton. What up, dude? How you doing, man?
I started in a few leagues and I was able to survive that mess. So I think I'm doing pretty good. Instead of a Monday Night Nightmare, it turned into a Monday Night Miracle. So I'm doing not too bad for drafting Andy Dalton in a couple leagues.
Here's the thing. It can't get any worse, man. You won. You put up respectable numbers, and you put up 90-something, didn't you?
Yeah, I went in. I think it was probably almost 50 points with the Diggs and someone else saving me from the nightmare that was Andy Dalton. But I went ahead and got through it, so that's all that matters. I'm not last place Lano for 1 week, so I'll go ahead and take that.
Tried to tell you, man. I preached on it for weeks and weeks how y'all should stay away from Andy Dalton. But you're doing good. So just real quickly, I hope you guys watch the draft show, kind of know who we got, because I'm going to skip that part of it right now and just talk about week one before we get into the questions. So we'll start out with myself. I did barely beat American Slumdog's Malachi David, who is a friend of the podcast. Barely. I stayed up till 12:30 Central Time to make sure I was going to win that game, because if Taekwondo Ku, who is it? What's his name? It's a crazy name.
Young Ho.
Kicker. Young Ho. Yeah. Young Ho Ku.
Choo choo.
Dan's kicker. Huh?
Choo choo.
If that guy would have hit that kick, man, we were going into overtime, and it probably would have been bad news for me, because C.J. Anderson probably would have got the difference. We'll see. And then how about Brandon McManus missing the late field goal? So that hurt me. So I sweated that one out, guys. I sweated that one out. Won at 100.5 to 95.5 over Malachi David. Basically, his star was Adam Thielen. Came out of nowhere. Great job, Sam Bradford. Props. My star was the Jaguars defense. But keep in mind, guys, I was without Mike Evans, my number one pick in the first round pick and number 3 pick in the draft. So I feel like I was handicapped. But you know what that means, guys? I'm with Mike Evans for 16 straight weeks. Deal with it. Let's move on to Dan. Romo the dog, 98.5, beat Darren Coppage, 86.5. So 12-point victory there. And so this is weird, Dan, in kind of a twist of fate here, because Darren Coppage was the guy who drafted ahead of me. I wanted Spencer Ware. Darren Coppage drafted Spencer Ware. You proceeded to draft Kareem Hunt. Worked out well and won you the game by far. Dan, you would have lost if Kareem Hunt just had a good day.
Yeah, well, he had a fantastic day, and I reaped the benefits. And it's no surprise to me that I started the season 1-0.
Hey, but just it's still a twist of fate, though, right, Dan? Crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy how that works, and I'm kind of
either way. Now, if that wouldn't have happened, say Spencer Ware didn't get hurt, he still would have took so many carries from Kareem Hunt, especially against that bad defense, that Kareem Hunt wouldn't have probably got 15 just because of the share of the workload.
Debatable.
Nah, I don't. Okay, so Spencer Ware would have got at least 8 to 10 carries if he was the starter in that game. Yeah, come on now. Sharkhandrick West got his share of the carries. So
yeah, 1 carry.
No, whatever. So either way, twist of fate, you won by 12. Kareem Hunt had 44.5 in our league. Let's move over to Ty Dillinger. That's our man Orlando Torres. Took on Colby Gatz. Team Gats, you got a 2-point victory, man. Stephon Diggs, I got him in another league, 24.5. Really played big again. What's up, Sam Bradford, dude? Damn, what did he drink before the game? And you took on Colby's best player, LaShawn McCoy. Assess your game.
Oh man, it was this one had me sweat. I thought it was down. For 47 points going into Monday night. Again, Andy Dalton really screwed me. Chiefs defense gave Brandon Cooks a good rough up, and chemistry between him and Tom Brady maybe it's just not quite there yet. But overall, turn around. I'm sure Kobe, wherever he was kind of sweating this out. I'm sure he probably thought he had this in the bag. He had me by like almost 50 points. So, and I was sweating a bit too because he had Phillip Rivers. So we had a couple Monday night players, and he had Phillip Rivers. So it honestly could have gone either way. But the fact that I scratched and clawed and 2-point victory, hey, I'll take that.
You should, Orlando. That was a good start for you. 1-0. You are not in last place. And let's keep that streak going. So every single week we can talk about how Orlando is not in last place. I think you're going to have to get a second win in a row to achieve that. We'll see.
That'll be tough. That'll be tough this week. It will. It'll be a little difficult.
Who's he got?
Me.
I got Dan the man.
Ooh, a showdown.
Although I did look at your team, Orlando, and it for some reason it looks a lot better now than it did when you first drafted it. So.
Yeah. I feel a lot
that could be a week one
Montgomery
overreaction. It could be a week one overreaction, but
does Jordan Howard still look good to you?
No, he's the one that doesn't. But Stephon Diggs looks pretty good as a flex. I mean, he's got last place. Lando has some decent wide receivers.
Crabtree is playing the Jets.
Yep. So I think it's going to be a close. I wouldn't be surprised if I did lose this one. I think it's going to be close. But
no, don't jinx me. Don't give me that. Don't jinx me right now.
Hey, I'm sorry. I'm with Dan here, Orlando. We'll let you assess your team in just a second. But Dan, he's got Ty Montgomery against Atlanta.
I'm not sold on that one.
Brandon Cooks against New Orleans.
Yeah, that's going to hurt me.
Michael Crabtree against the Jets.
That's going to hurt me.
And we'll see.
His wide receivers
against Miami. We don't know what Miami is yet, so that's an unknown. Charger. He got Chargers D. Okay, we'll see. They're Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde right now. I don't know who they are based on that Monday night game, but I don't know. So I don't know. We'll see, Dan. But let's let Orlando break down his team. So let's play a fun little game I talked about earlier. Let's Orlando break down your team and say, if there was one guy you probably wouldn't draft now, who would it be? And was there one guy you drafted you're very proud of and you think is going to surprise people?
I guess, and how big our league is. Right now, there's probably not someone I'm totally regretting. Maybe Jordan Howard, but I don't feel as bad about that because ultimately the Bears, they need someone to catch the ball. So I think even if Cohen does outshine him in a couple of weeks, the Bears are just simply not going to go away from Jordan Howard.
He was your first-round pick, 13th overall.
Yeah, he was my first-round pick, so he's not going to be that RB1 guy that I thought he was going to be, but he's not completely going away either. So if I would, obviously I didn't know that, but if I could, maybe I would have went, another route instead of Jordan Howard. So I guess at the moment, that's probably what I would say. Now,
so you're not saying Andy Dalton.
Andy Dalton, I think I picked up. I could drop him to waivers, pick up someone else. So that's it's not too bad.
To your credit, you did draft two quarterbacks. You didn't just draft Andy Dalton. You drafted Andy Dalton and Dak Prescott.
True, and I should have started Prescott, but Andy, you don't get me started on Andy Dalton. The matchup was just perfect for him at home. You got everybody healthy, and he turned around and boned me. So I'm not starting him this week again.
That matchup was not perfect. That was a bad matchup. That was a bad opening week matchup. I'm telling you.
But there's somebody that I do like. I wouldn't say love, but do like. I do feel a lot better about Ty Montgomery after seeing him. I was a little bit iffy on him, but when figuring high scoring offense, so you got a team like Atlanta, so Ty Montgomery might be a nice pick right there. And Brandon Cooks is going to be weak with headaches, but he's in a high scoring offense too. I know he's got 40-year-old Tom Brady throwing him the ball, but that's a risk reward type of guy. Some weeks he might blow up for 30 points, and other week he might give me 11, just like he did the past week.
So let me talk about your 5th round pick. This is 69th overall. You got Stephon Diggs, your leading scorer. Not bad.
Yeah, there you know exactly. There you go. For where I took him, especially in a 14 team, I love that pick right there. Yeah, and I don't think that was a fluke. Him and Thielen, I think that's something that's probably going to be pretty consistent.
You think so? I'm not convinced that's the everyday Sam Bradford now. Where did this guy come from? But damn, what a game.
Yeah, well, they were carrying on a chemistry like that last season too. It may have not been as consistent, but Thielen and Diggs were getting targeted quite a bit by Bradford.
What and do you think, Dan? Do you think maybe while we're talking about the Vikings, does the addition of Dalvin Cook help that much? Plus, you got Latavius Murray. Take it for what it is, but you seem to be stacked now as far as talent goes. Is it just confidence now? Now you got a more balanced team, and guys are going to shine like Sam Bradford.
I mean, I think it's the offensive line. I mean, they have 5 new starters this year. Their offensive line was atrocious last year, so they spent some money in the offseason and signed, I think it was both of their tackles. So their offensive line is finally blocking. Yes, you have a running back that can actually run through holes when they're there, so that helps too. And I think it's just Sam Bradford getting another year in an offense. It's something you don't see a lot with Sam Bradford. I think it was his first 6 or 7 years. He had a new offensive coordinator, a new system every single year. So now that he's actually in the second year of the system, he's only going to become to get better. I don't think we're going to see that type of performance every week. But he's a solid NFL quarterback. So fantasy wise, he's going to do decent, but I mean, you're not going to see him 300 yards every single week, but it's not, I don't think it's a flash in the pan either.
So the bigger question to me is, guys, what happened to Teddy Bridgewater? Are we saying an injury like that and he's done? Because he was the prohibitive starter, or undisputed starter. And Sam Bradford is like, oh my God, y'all traded for Sam Bradford. What happened to Teddy Bridgewater? Is this guy done?
Well, I mean, he's still hurt, so I mean, he's still working his way back. It was, possibly a career-ending injury similar to what Jalen Smith had with the Cowboys, where there was nerve damage. Now, Jalen Smith was able to recover from that. I don't know, if Bridgewater's was maybe more severe, but anytime it's a knee injury, you have nerve damage. It's going to be a long road ahead. And he's on the PUP list, so he might come back this season. I think they're probably better off holding him out another year. But yeah, I mean, he's going to have to fight.
Back, right? Either way.
No, not the starting job. He's going to have to fight. I think he'll be fighting for the number 2 position with the team. But yeah, it's Sam Bradford's job, and he's not just going to lose the job because Bridgewater is becoming healthy again.
Bridgewater will be the starting quarterback in San Francisco next year.
Kirk Cousins.
Okay, well, that too. Okay, so Teddy Bridgewater will go to Washington. We'll see. But I think there's still some life in those legs of Teddy Bridgewater, who was, again, the definite starter before this all happened. So we'll see. You hate to see a guy lose a job to injury, but you also hate to see a young guy's career end due to injury. Sometimes it happens. We'll see. So Dan Schalk, assess your team right now. If there was any guy, and be honest, Dan, if there's one guy you regret, be honest with the MFST audience. If there's any guy that you drafted that you're second guessing, for whatever reason, who might that be?
Yeah, I already second guessed him. Sebastian Janikowski, I cut him. He's done. He's off the team. So that was definitely my worst draft pick.
So you got Young Hoku.
Yeah, and I'm not too pleased with him either. I literally picked him up because I know he's a kicker and I liked his name. So that's why he's on my team.
Young Ho. Well,
yeah, I like my backs. I think mid-season my team is going to be absolutely stacked, with Joe Mixon, Kareem Hunt, Marlon Mack, Jamal Williams. I just have backs. My team is built for mid to late season. It's not built for the beginning of the year. So
what's your outlook on Mike Williams then?
He's a pure bench guy for me, but if he can produce anything, I mean, he's starting to run already, and he's not doing routes yet at full speed, but he's still working his way back. He's not on the PUP list, so he's on the active roster. So he can come back anytime, but I think it's still going to be a while. He's another mid to late season guy.
You got him in the 14th round, so no sweat there. What about?
Yeah, but I like my team. I like where it's headed. It's not there where I need it to be right now, but in the future, the coming weeks, it's only going to be getting better.
2 quick questions for you on your roster real quick, Dan. How did you like Marcus Mariota's performance against the Raiders? Not bad. 18 points. So assessment on Marcus Mariota real quick, and assessment on Cole Beasley real quick, which I thought Cole would have had a bigger game, and I was looking at Cole Beasley as well. I think he is definitely in a PPR league. I think Cole Beasley could be a big player this year. So Marcus Mariota, Cole Beasley, they're on your team after 1 week. What do you see and feel? How do you feel about them?
Yeah, I mean, I like Marcus Mariota. Obviously, he had a rushing touchdown, so what he can add in with his legs, with his passing, he's only going to be getting better. He was not as good as the announcers in that game, Tony Romo, but he was still solid.
That's right. In a non-football topic, real quick, Tony Romo's back.
Yeah,
so he's out 4 to 6 weeks now with a sore throat, though. I don't know if you saw that today.
Mm-hmm.
He's out 4 to 6 weeks.
He would push through. He'll push through. So yeah, Mariota, I'm happy with him. And then Beasley, it was tough. I liked the first half from him, but that second half was very odd. The Giants held the ball for almost 10 minutes in the third quarter, and I mean the Cowboys were ahead, so they really didn't have a need to pass. So they were just playing ball control. I think in most games he'll probably be targeted a little more. Terrence Williams came out of nowhere and was actually catching passes, something that he hasn't done in 4 years. So it was kind of shocking to see how involved Terrence Williams was. But I think Cole Beasley is ultimately going to be one of the go-to targets. Dez, Jay Witt, and Cole Beasley will be the three guys.
So one guy on your roster you're fairly pleased with, didn't expect what you think you might get out of him for the rest of the season. That was maybe a bargain.
I mean, Kareem Hunt, I guess. I mean, I got him in the 6th round, I think. Marlon Mack, he looks like he's going to be getting some more playing time right away than I had expected. He got a lot of touches week 1. And a lot of them came in the first half before they were absolutely getting destroyed. So that shows me that he's still a part of the game plan. He had a fumble, and they still put him back in there. So I like what I see out of Marlon Mack. I got him pretty late, right before Orlando wanted to take him, so I got lucky there because I think he's going to be a stud, in 3 to 4 weeks.
All right. And so looking at my team now, moving on before we start answering these fantasy mailbag questions is I know for all the hate I got about Andy Dalton this week, I don't even have him on my roster. That's Orlando. I ain't even got him. I got Matt Ryan. We're fine. I'm cool. But that's not my disappointment. Or I guess if I had to name a disappointment right now, we're going to stick to the same team with the Bengals. Is the thing is with Jeremy Hill, I just don't know what they're doing right now. To me, I still see Jeremy Hill as the number 1 running back on that team, although Joe Mixon is going to challenge him, and Giovanni Bernard is just not big staturally enough. Is that a word, Dan? Staturally, you're the Fantasy Sports Writer Association member now. Is stature? What am I saying? He ain't big enough. He's going to get hurt. So he's not going to play a full season. So I see Jeremy Hill as value. I don't know, man. I don't know if it's ever going to pan out this year for Jeremy Hill. So just real quickly, let me see what price I even paid for him. So 11th round, 143, not too bad, but that's a guy I'm just up in the air about. A guy that I really like, well, it ain't a guy, it's a bunch of guys. This is my Jaguars defense. Got them pretty late in the draft, and that was not a fluke thing against the Texans, folks. This is the Jaguars defense is going to be really good this year. Not 30 a game, which is what they got me this week, but really good. Really, really good. If they're available, pick them up. And then I like Allen Hurns just because Allen Robinson is now out for the year. So I like Allen Hurns as maybe now the number 1 in Jacksonville, regardless of who the quarterback is. As long as he stays healthy, he should have opportunities. So I don't know. Long season to go. We are all 1-1. Congratulations to My Fantasy Podcast on a great week one. Hey, let's hear it. Let's hear it. You congratulate Orlando. Orlando was. You're the one that the folks were questioning.
There's still a lot of questions.
It was an anomaly last year. I'm just put it that way.
And in basketball, right?
Yeah. Basketball was just something else, all right?
I mean, there's a lot of trash talk going on right now, guys, between the guys in our league in the MyFantasySportsTalk.com community with the writers, and now even the fans were intermingling them. Darren Coppage, who Dan beat, Doug, what was Doug? Doug, somebody.
Dennis Durso.
Doug. I'm sorry, Dennis. I called you Doug, but yeah, Dennis Durso. So a lot of you guys are really competing, and I like it. Dennis Durso put up the most points in the first week, did he not?
And I don't think he did. I think he lost.
Okay, I'll tell you real quick. One of our fans put up the most point.
Oh, that was Jim. That was
Jim Kibblin. Yep, Jim Kibblin.
$5 footlong. I like that team name. That's a good one.
So
you guys ever heard that one before?
I have not. I see a lot of repeats, but I've never heard that one.
Yeah, I mean, I like it if Favre was still relevant, but he's not. But it is a pretty great name. Maybe it was like 5 years ago.
So let's give love to the fans. Jim Kibblin. So this is what this dude did. He scored about 14, 15 more points than anybody else in the league. Taking home the week one honors, a fan of the site. So Jim Kibblin, $5 footlong, has Drew Brees. This is who he started anyway this week. Drew Brees, Carlos Hyde, Chris Thompson, Washington running back, who had 13. Where's my Rob Kelly? Antonio Brown went off again, destroying any kind of prediction that I had about Antonio Brown, at least for 1 week, but he went off 26.5. Demaryius Thomas, 8.5, not bad. Delaney Walker had 10.5. Kyle Rudolph, tight end, had 9.5. His Panthers D had 16, and his kicker Dustin Hopkins for Washington had 5. So he ended up with 114. The rest of his team is Theo Riddick, Jamison Crowder, Darren Sproles, Tyrod Taylor, Robert Woods, Kenny Stills, and Nelson Aguilar, who had 17 on his bench. So did Tyrod Taylor, who actually ended up having more points than Drew Brees. What do you say, Dan? What do you say?
Yeah, it's a pretty solid team, especially if Chris Thompson still continues to play the way he is. He's the main receiving back in Washington, and received a lot of targets. So overall, I like his team. He's got the 2 tight end system, which I am a proponent of. I like the 2 tight end system: Delaney Walker, Kyle Rudolph. So that's solid.
Yeah, you're going to see that from me this year with Greg Olsen, and I think another stud is going to be Julius Thomas. Just wait and see with Jay Cutler. We'll see, but that's kind of week one from the site and what happened in our fantasy week one from MyFantasySportsTalk.com and our fantasy league. The writers along with the fans, appreciate it, guys. All you participated. Well, we got some competition this year, Dan, if we're gonna repeat for the championship. But let me ask you one kind of side topic while I'm thinking about it right quick. Why so much hate? And I've been right there with you, but why so much hate on Tyrod Taylor? The dude kind of gets it done, and fantasy-wise, he's always relevant.
I guess. I mean, fantasy. Well, that's okay. He's going to lose his job by week 7 or 8. So this year is enjoy him while you have him.
The Pro Bowler, you're 1-0.
Oh, Pro Bowler! Don't even get me started on the Pro Bowl. When 18,000 people make the Pro Bowl per year, Pro Bowl. Get out of here with that. He's not a franchise quarterback. He does decent in fantasy because he has that rushing ability. So, yeah, he's not the worst fantasy quarterback, but he doesn't help out the targets around him. Like, I would never own a receiver of Tyrod because he still can't throw for barely over 200 yards a game. So, himself, yes, but the future is bleak in Buffalo until these draft picks start to have. They're doing the Cleveland Browns thing, accumulating a ton of draft picks. But I think they're going to lose a lot of games within the first few months, and you're going to hear Nathan Peterman's name be called and eventually become the starter midseason.
Kind of consensus of who the Bills fans are calling for at this point. So, but We'll see. So now, enough about us. Let's talk about you and your fantasy questions next. You're listening to and watching My Fantasy Podcast from MyFantasySportsTalk.com. Brandon Reed, Dan Shaw, Orlando Torres. We're live on YouTube, up in the YouTubes, on the internets. Check them out, www. And also, check out the replays on the website, MyFantasySportsTalk.com, and on SoundCloud, and on WBLZ Sports, WBLZSports.com. Thanks, guys. Let's talk about it. So many questions to get into for the rest of the show. I guess we'll start right here. This is the first one presented to me, so this is the first one I'll read. Number 1. Orlando already knows. That's why he's like, Orlando already knows. Okay. Here we go. Compose. Hey, Dan. F-U! Exclamation. I read your Matthew Berry piece, and it's flooping garbage. Berry goes out on a limb every week in front of the entire fantasy football community while you're the idiot that talks to his bathroom mirror. Berry's got more talent and hustle in his shriveled foreskin. Well, I can say that. That's okay. Than your a-hole has seen in his entire life. Okay. If you're so smart, give me one player who everyone thinks will have a great week too, except you. I'll be waiting. This is James Morris King. First of all, I don't even really understand the final question of what he's really asking. If you're so smart, give me one player who everyone thinks will have a great week except you. This is for you, Dan, so I'm going to stay out of it. But first of all, for James Morris King, let me just say, Dan's hustle is unprecedented. Okay, he started this whole thing. He started this whole thing that you are watching and keeping up with. Okay, it's grown and grown by leaps and bounds over just a short period of time of 2 years. Okay, this is not Dan's source of income. He does so much of this out of his own pocket. He does so much out of this of his spare time. Okay, Dan has a full-time job. Dan also covers sports for the University of Buffalo. Dan is also coaching youth football on his spare time, which is about that many hours per week. And this dude is also now a member of the Fantasy Sports Writing Association. Okay? The dude's hustle is unprecedented. I don't know about Matthew Berry. I'm sure he has an extensive resume. I'm sure he does. He's on ESPN. Congratulations to Matthew Berry. We all do this because of the love of it. No one is 100% right. Matthew Berry is as wrong about half the stuff as he is right. And Dan is probably more higher on the right side than the wrong. So this personal attack is just a little bit ridiculous. Read the article for what it is, and enough with the personal attack. It's all fun and games. This is not real serious life business here. This is fantasy sports, okay? And Dan is pretty damn good at his craft. You have to admit that. You keep up with it, you watch it, you like it. I'm glad we have you as a hater, James Morris King. Dan?
Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate that. And you know, one thing that I like, I mean, I like the feedback that I get every week. I receive hundreds of messages, not only on myself, but you guys as well, both Brandon and Orlando. So it's, you know, I like the interaction that we've kind of developed here with our community. And I personally, I don't mind. I don't take it very personal. I mean, this one was a little extreme, so it kind of caught me off guard. But at the same time, you know, if you come at me, I'm gonna respond to that, and we're gonna put it on this platform. So, you know, I'm not shy about what I say, about what I write. I stand behind it. So, you know, bring your hate on. We'll put it on the show, and we'll answer your questions. So that's honestly what I'm gonna do. You know, he came. I somewhat understand the question throughout all the stuff that's there. So. So I guess
Matthew Berry lover. I mean, what are we saying here? Is this dude is he Matthew Berry's cousin? Must be Matthew Berry's cousin.
Maybe it is. It could be. Just so people don't, if they didn't see the article, Matthew Berry brings out the love-hate column every week. This week, his week one was extraordinarily horrendous. I mean, he had some really bad picks on there. I added up all his picks with, whether they were good or not, and it was around 68% was wrong. So it's almost 70%. Now, 50-50, I guess you can take with fantasy, but, you have that type of platform. So I called him out on it. And in the article, I, pointed out his main inconsistencies. The biggest for me was Matthew Stafford, having him on your bench and playing Carson Palmer. They played each other, and that was a complete reversal of what they should have been. And obviously he had Adrian Peterson on his love list. I've been saying he shouldn't be on a team or a roster the entire preseason and even now. So it's just different things like that where we disagree, and I felt the need to bring it out there. So I'm glad it got such a reaction. It's gotten thousands upon thousands of views. So you read Matthew Berry's stuff. He's wrong a lot of times. So now come to us and see what we have to offer, because I think our advice is, honestly, it's better than what you're going to get at a lot of the main outlets.
Adrian Peterson, seriously? I mean, you got to be called out on that. I mean, if you watched the game, you saw Adrian Peterson standing on the sideline when the game was relevant, okay? In a situation he's never really been in his life. He ain't going in the game in critical moments in Minnesota. Are you kidding me? Latavius Murray fumbled and will go in quicker than Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson has nothing left. So you got to be calling out on that. Come on, give me a break. So, I don't know. Again, must be Matthew Berry's cousin. That's the only explanation I have for it, Dan. Must be Matthew Berry's cousin. But anyway, James Morris King says, give him a player everyone thinks will be great in week 2 except you. So, I'm
going to give him 3. I'm going to give him 3 players.
I guess, okay, so let me set the guidelines here. Name a player for week 2 that is supposed to go off and you think will not go off. I guess that's the guidelines of the question here.
Yeah, so I took a top 10 rank, and I got rankings from Fantasy Pros, which takes all the consensus as experts and ranks their weekly rankings based on matchup. So I took a top 10 quarterback and 2 top 20 running backs, and I'm saying they are not going to have a good week, and keep them out of your lineup. And Orlando might want to listen to this. So my quarterback that I'm choosing, he's the 9th ranked on Fantasy Pros. That's Ben Roethlisberger against the Minnesota Vikings. We saw what they did to Drew Brees. Put up a decent performance, 15 fantasy points in our league. That's nothing you really want. When Tyrod Taylor is outscoring you like that, you're not going to want this guy in your starting lineup. So I don't like Big Ben this week. I think they're gonna pound the ball more to Le'Veon Bell and try and get that running game going, trying to get Bell more touches than he received in week 1. So I would leave Big Ben, especially if you have a decent middling option. Big Ben, sit him this week. Another one, Ty Montgomery against Atlanta. Orlando's not going to want to hear it. Well, I hope he starts him, because I don't think he's going to have a good week. He got fed the ball a lot more than I think anybody expected week 1 against the Seahawks. The touches might be there, but I like Atlanta's defense. They showed up a little bit against a Chicago Bears offense that isn't heralded. They kind of got freaked out by Tariq Cohen, the human joystick, a little bit, but overall they shut him down. And I expect him to do so with Ty Montgomery, not only running but receiving, keeping him out of that backfield, on those screen passes, short routes. And another one who had a great week 1 is Mike Gillislee. Three touchdowns, obviously, Thursday night. He's ranked inside the top 20, facing a New Orleans defense that really isn't that good. But I expect James White to have the better game than Gillislee. I don't think they're going to be the Patriots are going to be that running team here. I think Tom Brady's going to be mad about his performance in week 1, and he's going to come week 2 firing, and you're going to see them spread it out, pass the ball a lot to James White and to the receivers, and I don't think their focused running game is going to be there. I think they're gonna spread it out and chuck the ball deep with Tom Brady. So 3 players there that I would sit that are all ranked within the top 20 or 10. James, there you go.
So now we can keep up with you next week and see exactly how you fared, Dan. But we got a Twitter gangster here. Twitter gangster James Morris King. Thanks for the question, though, man. Just maybe you should give us your predictions each week so we can have something to talk about, and I'm sure it'll be lovely. But that's it. Don't question Dan's hustle, man. That's the one thing, man, since I joined My Fantasy Podcast a little over 2 years ago, I think now, is this dude, Dan is, y'all don't understand what's going on behind the scenes. Dan is always working a hustle. Dan is always working a promotions deal. Dan is doing this as not his main source of income, okay? And, he's working his hustle always. Orlando, you can contribute to that, right? Dan hustles. Dan is a hustler.
Yeah, no, Dan. Yeah, no, he's a hustler. He's always doing something, whether it's a promotion and it gives us a discount, whether they're selling, merchandise or road insurance. He does a lot for stuff with the college teams. Dan does a lot, and that's one thing I really appreciate because
Dan is the main editor and publisher as well. I mean, Dan is editing and publishing 95% of our material.
Yeah, no, he does it all. He does it all, and exactly what we said. Still having to do a full-time job, and teaching the kids, and still making MFST. One of his main priorities is it's amazing. It's amazing how Dan finds time in a day for himself. It's crazy.
Well, and Orlando's been with us a long time too, and I've seen us grow in leaps and bounds with the addition of the entertainment section, which is blowing up too. The fantasy's only got bigger, the podcast has only got bigger. So watch out, and it's all Dan's creation. So thanks, James Morris King, for letting us articulate that on today's podcast. Next one, this is for you, Orlando. We going back to you now. It's from CJ Carlos. Hey, Orlando, I wanted to give you an MFST a shot this week, so I took your advice with your man up, step aside piece, and I have to say, F you. I started Jeremy Hill and Marquise Godwin in daily fantasy, and I literally came in third last out of 7,000 entries. I would like an apology. Okay, that's off my chest. Now, give me your best daily fantasy play this weekend that won't be absolutely effing stupid. God bless. CJ Carlos. So many mixed emotions there.
I love the ending. God bless. There you go, Orlando. At least God blessed you, man.
Yeah, at least it tells me he doesn't hate me so much. I can't give you an apology, though, man, because I'm, just like you, I got bone from the Bengals. I'm still over here trying to walk myself because Andy Dalton gave me a pretty good one. I don't know how I survived that. Unfortunately, the matchup was just right. And Jeremy Hill, whatever. It was the last time I probably talk up a guy like Jeremy Hill again. But going back to a player that you want to play in DFS, Corey Davis comes to mind. I know they're going to Jacksonville. I know this is going to be a tough matchup. But you know what? The Texans are horrendous offense. You put them against a better team like the Tennessee Titans. They got a better offensive line, better weapons. I'm not worried about Eric Decker. Corey Davis saw a team high 10 targets. He only caught 6 balls, I think, for like 69 yards. He had no touchdowns. And I know Jacksonville is pretty good at covering the field, whether it's wide receivers, running backs. But you put him against a better offense, like the Titans. You got Marcus Mariota in the back. You don't know if he's gonna chunk the ball, if he's gonna rush. He's DeMarco Murray. I think Corey Davis is a great DFS play this week, especially with the high volume that he's getting. He's fairly cheap, so you might want to jump on that. Another guy that I'm pretty high on this week is Chris Carson from the Seahawks. I know last week they had a pretty tough matchup with Green Bay, but this week hosting the 49ers, I think it's pretty much a get-right game. Eddie Lacy is done. He's droppable if you ask me. I know Thomas Ross is coming back, but hey, it's a matter of time before this guy gets hurt again, even if he does play. I talked to CJ Prosise fairly quite a bit in the preseason, and I even drafted him, but sadly to say, I don't think he's the man that I was hoping that I was drafting. So Chris Carson, I think, is a great DFS play. I'm not going to say he's going to put up a Tariq Cohen kind of type of play this week, but he's worth taking a flyer on if you'd like to spend money somewhere else on a bigger wide receiver, running back. I think Chris Carson is pretty interesting. Will probably the number of starts he gets is going to be fairly low. So I think those are two players, interesting players for you, Carlos, that'll be interesting for your lineup in DFS.
Dan, you have any DFS daily fantasy sports players in mind that should be very good values this week?
Yeah, my number one quarterback in 2017, Jameis Winston, FanDuel, he's only $7,800. 10 more quarterbacks are more expensive than him, so you're getting a solid value play there, and he's playing Chicago.
It's funny you say that because I got DraftKings pulled up right now, and he is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10th down the list, and 6,300 in DraftKings.
Yep. So I like Jameis Winston this week. They coming off that bye, that crucial bye. You always want to look at a team after bye, even if it's week 1. Jameis Winston, like it. I'll throw another one out there. Corey Coleman against Baltimore. They had a great showing, against Cincinnati, their defense. But at $6,000, he's a pretty high target of DeShone Kizer, and I think he's going to have a pretty solid week against Baltimore. I don't think they're going to be shutting out the Cleveland Browns, just the Cincinnati Bengals and that terrible quarterback, Andy Dalton.
Bounce back. Watch out. So we're talking about daily fantasy. I'll be real quick and wrap this one up too. I gotta say, look at Allen Hurns just because he's the projected number 1 guy now, I guess, in Jacksonville. So we'll see what happens there.
I'd stay away personally.
Well, let me just see what his value is right quick. So while we're talking about it, he's, like I said, he's supposedly the number 1 guy in Jacksonville right now. They destroyed Houston. And, dude, guys, Allen Hurns is way down there. I ain't even found him yet. He's behind Cole Beasley. So as far as value goes, and in dollar value, there he is, 3,900 in DraftKings. So that's a value to me. That's a guy I'll be playing this Saturday. It's worth taking a chance. 3,900, guys. But Allen Robinson's done. Keep an eye on the Arizona Cardinals backfield situation with Kerwin Williams / Andre Ellington, and they even re-signed Chris Johnson. So take that for what it's worth. Kendall Wright, Chicago. He's just about the only one left. If they're going to throw the ball, Kendall Wright's got to get at least half the targets now. So watch out for Kendall Wright. Chris Conley. If Alex Smith is going to keep playing like the other Alex Smith, then Chris Conley is going to eventually be a weapon because he's about the only other guy they have. You Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, then it's Chris Conley. So Chris Conley could bust out any day now for a pretty big day in fantasy. And then the other guy I got is Deshaun Watson. I think he'll be the starter, at least to get playing time. We'll see. Just keep an eye on that. If not this Sunday, probably next Sunday, and he's not going to come in with a very high value in your daily fantasy. He's not going to cost you very much to take a flyer on. And he's got some weapons, just got to use them. So maybe Deshaun Watson is a little bit of a flare of energy that is needed for Houston. Keep an eye on that. So there's some of your daily plays. And one last word. Hey, Orlando. F you. God bless.
Well, that God bless. I can't be so mad. That should be a drop right there. he's apologizing for telling me F you. It's like a love-hate thing. So
no, he wants an apology. The thing was all over the place. So he's saying, I took your fantasy advice in your piece, and you screwed me. F you. Hey, by the way, who you got next week? God bless. It's all over the place.
I screwed him. He might as well call me Andy Dalton because I screwed him. Is basically what I got out of that.
That's CJ Carlos for you. Thanks, CJ. Oh, my goodness. Let's move on and answer more fantasy mailbag questions if we dare. So we've got Dan's hate and Orlando's hate. Mine's got to be around the corner here somewhere. Oh, my God. We're going to continue this thing next. You're listening to and watching My Fantasy Podcast from MyFantasySportsTalk.com. Thanks for joining us after a 2-week delay. We're deep into it now. We've done our draft. We've had 1 week of fantasy football. Myself, Dan, and Orlando, we're all 1-0 in the MyFantasySportsTalk.com Fantasy League. And here we go. Going to keep answering more questions. This one comes from Clint McSweeney. I remember my first fantasy league too, Brandon. Andy Dalton is a top 4 quarterback. What? Do you hit the crack pipe before you come on the show? I drafted him in all 6 of my leagues. Should he be dropped for any of the following? Carson Wentz, Mike Glennon, Tyrod Taylor, DeShone Kizer, or Deshaun Watson? I can't believe I drafted Andy can't score a positive point Dalton, says Clint McSweeney. I don't know, man. Just let the week 1 overreaction hit. First of all, dude, you drafted Andy Dalton in 6 leagues. I never was a proponent of that, nor would you never ever hear me saying that. If you play in 6 fantasy leagues, you're playing enough damn fantasy to know not to draft Andy Dalton in all 6. What are you doing? Are you playing with the same people, same draft in 6 leagues? That's ridiculous. I never was a proponent of that. I just said to watch out for the Cincinnati Bengals and Andy Dalton. This is a total overreaction. Let me tell you what, guys. Tom Brady only scored basically 14 more points than Andy Dalton, who had probably the worst fantasy game of his life. Okay, and that's Tom Brady, the GOAT, supposedly. So week 1 overreaction. How about that David Johnson game? Get his ass out of there. He sucked. How about Rob Gronkowski? What an overreaction there to him. He sucked, man. Drop him right now. What do he have, like 2 points? God. Some of you probably spent a 3rd or 4th round pick on Gronkowski. Ridiculous. Week 1 overreactions. Calm yourself. By the time this podcast is published, you're not going to want to talk about this subject anymore because Andy Dalton will have fully beat down the Houston Texans and looked fine. Okay, overreactions. This is week 1 overreactions. I get it. Julio Jones. What about him? Only 8 points in week 1. Man, what a bust. That's ridiculous. Alex Smith. Hey, if you want to play the week 1 overreaction game, then I would suggest going out and getting Alex Smith right now and starting him in every league you can. If you can grab Alex Smith, he is your ticket to the Super Bowl, the Fantasy Football League Championship. If you want to overreact, I ain't buying it, man. This was a very tough division opponent in week 1, and they got him. They just got him. 4 interceptions. Boomer Esiason was on. Is it Boomer? No, who was on NFL, the Showtime show?
Boomer.
Yeah, Boomer. Yeah, the old Bengals quarterback. Yeah, Boomer. He said the same thing. I had a game with 4 interceptions, bounced back fine. It happens. It happens to everybody. So let's not overreact. But I don't. It's just overreaction, man. It's just overreaction. In 6 leagues. Come on. Even Orlando wasn't dumb enough to do that. What are you, crazy?
We don't know that. We don't know Orlando's
come on.
We don't know that. He could be Andy Dalton it up everywhere. I wouldn't put it past last place Lando there.
I see that shade, Brandon, as he's starting. It's all right. I'm not worried about Dan either. He'll be 1-1 by the end of the week. It's all right.
I will say for Clint, Carson Wentz is a good pickup. If Carson Wentz is available,
he's not, though. He's not. You know that. I don't know what kind of leagues this guy's playing in, but Carson Wentz is not available.
That's what he said. Should he be dropped for any of the following? Wentz,
quit typing in messages to me and pick up Carson Wentz then. If that's the case, why are you asking me?
He wants our advice. That's what we're here for, Brandon.
Well, the thing I don't get from Clint here is that he's saying it's not his first fantasy league, but he goes and drafts Andy Dalton in all 6 of them. I don't get that.
I think maybe he might have been a huge fan of Brandon, and you just let your biggest fan down.
Oh, Brandon Love. Damn, Brandon.
Or Brandon just did what I did to him last year, talking up Eli Manning, and now he's talking up Andy Dalton, and Andy Dalton's going to have an Eli Manning-type season.
My biggest fan would not ask me, do I hit the crack pipe for every show, okay? That's not something my biggest fan would say.
Well, are you going to answer that question?
No.
No, just...
Hey, you even turning one of my good fans against me, Judy Pertins. Even Judy Pertins chimes in on this thing a little bit later in the show. I don't know.
I mean, Andy Dalton did have a pretty bad week.
It was a horrible week.
It's coming out of the woodwork. If Eli Manning had that type of performance week 1 last year, I would have probably heard the same thing.
So, Orlando, let me get your take on it real quick. You drafted Andy Dalton. I mean, you're not scared, right? I mean, you got a choice this week, I guess. You got Dak Prescott, too. But, I mean, come on, this is a fluke. But even you who was high, and then this is what I meant by this. Even you, who was fairly high, you weren't just taking my advice. You knew that the Bengals had a good shot at being an explosive offense this year. Who drafted Andy Dalton in our league? You backed him up, but you drafted him. You played in other leagues. Were you looking at Andy Dalton? I mean, how high was he? I'm hitting that right. Was he on your list? Seriously, if you played in, say, 2, 3, how many leagues did you play in, and how many were you looking at Andy Dalton? Period.
No, well, the evidence is there. When Andy Dalton's healthy, when he's right, easily top 5, outside the top 5, top 10 quarterback. I think it was just an anomaly. It's not something you're going to see consistent from the Bengals. It was just horrendous. I mean, honestly, that was probably like his first career game ever as a pro, right? 4 interceptions, just a horrible game. Don't expect that. I mean, you look at the weapons they got there. AJ Green, Eifert, Nigga, right, and Mixon and Giovanni Bernard. I'm not counting Hill there. But yeah, I don't expect that to happen. And I did draft them because this is not always going to be like that. The Bengals should get right. It was just a horrible week 1. And it was just a weird week 1 in fantasy in general. I mean, just like the other names you named, how many guys you took in the first 2 or 3 rounds really gave you that absolute value outside of like Antonio Brown or another guy like that? It was just one of those weird weeks. I'm not worried about Dalton. He'll get it right.
But you weren't going to draft him in 6 leagues if you played in 6 leagues.
Absolutely not. The only other reason I took him in the other league is because I had Winston, so I needed that fill-in, and Andy Dalton was available for me, so I went ahead and took him. That's the only reason why I took him in another league.
Here's the funny and ironic thing, Clint McSweeney. I did actually drop one of my draft picks, Tim Hightower, who is unemployed right now as far as I know, for Deshaun Watson, the same guy you were talking about. So I'm way ahead of you. I'm even ahead of the games. So what, you got to keep moving. Even if you fall down, you got to keep moving. And I did that before week 1 play began. You got to keep moving, man. You got to keep moving. But anyway, Dan, get this hand cart back on the rail right quick. Answer the question. So if you got a chance, if you seriously got a chance to pick up wins, but even that, Glennon, Tyrod Taylor, Deshaun Kaiser, Deshaun Watson, any of those 4 guys, are you dropping Andy Dalton outright to pick one of those guys up if you absolutely had to?
Only Carson Wentz. I would pick up Carson Wentz. I think he's going to put together a solid year. But Glennon, Tyrod, Kaiser, Watson, no, I wouldn't. I would still count on Andy Dalton to be the guy that you go with. I mean, you drafted him for a reason. You listened to our own Brandon Reed, and let us know week 16, week 17 how that turned out. Send us some hate then if Andy Dalton doesn't turn it around. But if Wentz is still available, go him. But other than that, don't fret too much over still having Dalton on your roster.
No, I'm going to do you one better. I'm going out on a limb here. Clint McSweeney, I want to hear from you on Friday. I want to hear from you on Friday morning how you still feel about that. Don't overreact to week 1. Don't fall for the trap, man, please. I see so many people trying to shake and bake and make so many moves after 1 or 2 weeks. It's ridiculous. Don't do it, okay? It's a long season. That's my only advice to you if you want to keep listening to my advice. But I'm still high on Andy Dalton. I'm still high on the Bengals. Marvin Lewis was my coach of the year, and I'm starting to question that. They need a big game tomorrow night against Houston, and I think they'll get it. I think the AFC South is flipping right now, and Indianapolis may be the worst team in football, and Houston has got to find some offense. We'll see what happens. They're slipping too. But thanks for the question. Seriously, if you've really listened to me, that if I'm your end-all be-all on fantasy, I've done my job. Appreciate it, Clint. The next question comes from, and I think we're done with the hate. I don't know. I had to look through the slate again, but maybe the personal attacks are over here, and we'll just get to answering some real fantasy football questions. So this one comes from Dan Savard. Kerwin Williams or Andre Ellington? This is a legit question here, guys. Who gets more touches? Who scores more fantasy points? Straight up to the point. Dan, Kerwin Williams, Andre Ellington. What does this Arizona backfield look like now? And how does it play out now that David Johnson is going to miss significant time?
Yeah, to me, it's a little scary, especially with the signing of Chris Johnson. I mean, I don't think he's going to get a lot of touches, but he might steal even some away. He's familiar with the offense, but ultimately, Kerwin Williams is the first and second down back. Andre Ellington's going to be that third down receiving back. I like Williams' skill set. I think he's solid. He's capable of scoring a touchdown, getting 50 to 75 yards rushing. I wouldn't expect anything more than that just because I don't think the touches are going to be there. In a PPR league, I might even lean towards Ellington because Palmer likes to throw to his back. So, there is going to be some targets there for whatever running back is targeted in the receiving game. And I just ultimately think that's going to be Ellington. Either way, I don't think you're going to get stud type numbers or even solid RB2 numbers from either guy. They're flex plays in deeper positions, personally, or deeper leagues. So if you have to play one, I would probably lean Kerwin Williams. But if it's a PPR league, Ellington might take the cake there. Either way, it's all scary as all hell. So I would try to stay away if you have better options, even if it were something weird like a Terrence West in Baltimore.
Weird? He's my starter. What are you talking about?
People are saying Javorius Allen, Buck Allen, is going to be rocking into his touches. So that worries me a little bit, but I would still go West over either of those Arizona backs.
Well, there's one, because there's one less Baltimore Raven. Okay, and that's Danny Woodhead.
Yep.
So Orlando, I'm glad you didn't jump on that train, that bandwagon or that train wreck again this year. Danny Woodhead's down again. I'm liking Terrence West. But anyway, back to the conversation here. I'll tell you this: Kerwin Williams and Andre Ellington were both snagged up in our league overnight. Okay, both these guys were snagged up. If that tells you anything, Orlando, what do you think about this Arizona Cardinals backfield situation?
Yeah, no, it's a mess. Just looking at it, and I think Arians there is going to just have it as committee. But if I think it's going to be who's going to get the more touches, possibly the more points, I'm going to go with Kerwin Williams. I just think, he's just a guy. I don't think he's going to be the guy to own, but with more touches, I think they're going to go with the upside in Kerwin Williams.
Well, here's the thing with me. I'm kind of leaning more towards what Dan was hinting at, and it is a split. It is a mess. I think Andre Ellington has the more value because you mentioned that Chris Johnson signing, and he is familiar with the system. He did great for them before when needed to be inserted into the starting lineup. He did great, even in his aging state, and I think he could probably about do that again because he hadn't played significant football in quite a while. So that scares me. I think Andre Ellington with the dual threat capability provides more fantasy value than Kerwin Williams. I honestly do. Is more familiar with the system. But Bruce Arians has came out and said that Kerwin Williams is going to be the number one guy. So I have no idea. I'm kind of with Dan at a flex play. One of the guys could break out and have a pretty damn good day, 12, 15 points or more, on a good day. So a good flex play there. You just don't know which one it's going to be till you kind of see this thing play out. He may need 2-3 weeks to really find it out and to see just how many touches Chris Johnson is going to get. At this point, I can't see him getting much more of a role than Adrian Peterson has, in New Orleans. So, and they're deep too. They kind of have even they have more of that solidified starter in Ingram. But I don't know. It's a mess. I hate messes. Detroit had a mess for a while that I was caught up in with a couple of different guys. So back when Reggie Bush was there, and it's not fun. It's not fun to play that fantasy game. So that's kind of why I stay away from that. So we'll see. I think you need a couple of weeks, Dan. We'll see how it all plays out. All right, the next one comes from a couple of my favorite fans. One of them happens to be Judy Pertins, and even she is getting on me about Andy Dalton. But the question starts out as this. Hey, guys, what an amazing first week. Let me ask you this. Is Alex Smith going to continue to dominate like he did on Thursday? Brandon, did you mean to say Alex instead of Andy in your fantasy football preview? Just messing around. Judy Pertins. No, I meant to say no. God, it's supposed to be Andy. Okay. I don't know. Alex Smith is kind of on that Sam Bradford platform with me from week one. Overreactions, I don't know. I have no idea. This is not. I think Alex Smith is looking over his shoulder at Patrick Mahomes, who they drafted number 1 in this year's draft. I think that's what got into Alex Smith. And I don't, unless it's a total collapse this year by the Patriots defense, which we have yet to see. They were great last year, right at the top of the league, if not top of the league in takeaways. We'll see. I don't know. Unless they've had a complete collapse. Maybe Dan can speak more about that. But I'm not really buying into Alex Smith. I never liked Alex Smith. I think that was an anomaly. But let me see. This week they're at home against Philly. Maybe for another week. I'm not liking it for this season. Having to play the Chargers and the Broncos, and the Raiders at least twice. I don't see that type of production from teams that are familiar with you and familiar with what you do. more so possibly than what the Patriots were. So I don't know. I think they've drafted Patrick Mahomes to groom him and take over. Alex Smith has got to know that. So Alex Smith has either got to be nervous, either performing over his head, or he's eventually going to collapse and fall, and Patrick Mahomes may take over. So I don't know. Dan, what do you think, man? Alex Smith, is he going to make it through the season and keep being this Alex Smith, or will you see Patrick Mahomes this season?
No, I don't think you'll see Patrick Mahomes this year. I mean, I think Alex Smith will keep that starting job, but I wouldn't expect a week one performance every week. I mean, 75 yards came on one play due to a blown coverage by Stephon Gilmore to Tyreek Hill. So, that helps skew the numbers a little bit. But yeah, I mean, you kind of hinted to it too. Just the defenses they play: the Broncos twice, Chargers twice, Raiders twice. They also play the Texans and the Giants. So, that's 8 games right there out of the season. I don't want to play Alex Smith. So I wouldn't want to own him for the entire season. Maybe have him as a backup, as a spot start every once in a while. But even then, I would leave Alex Smith on the waiver wire. He's got to show me more than 1 week on a Thursday night against the Patriots that defensively just didn't seem to be fully invested. Gilmore looked bad. Their secondary in general looked bad. Their linebackers looked bad. It was rough to watch if you were a Patriots fan. So it doesn't happen often, but I think it was more of the circumstances rather than Alex Smith all of a sudden 10 years into the league becoming this great down the field passer. It's just not who he is.
Something else I just realized, guys. I mean, what is going on with the Patriots defense? Do you realize, at least in our league, they gave up the first and second most fantasy points in the league with 44.5 to Kareem Hunt and 39 to Alex Smith on the same damn team? What?
And I think they got like minus 6 points or something like that in the league as well if you played them.
The defense.
Yeah.
Right. No, not good. Not good at all. So, I don't know. Orlando, what do you think? Is this just an anomaly, a fluke game maybe from the Patriots with a little bit of Super Bowl hangover? Is Alex Smith going to continue this? How do you feel about the Chiefs' situation at quarterback?
Yeah, and I don't think he continues this, but I do think from what you said, I think he is looking over his shoulder a bit. I don't think we see Mahomes this season or this year, but I was a little bit skeptical of a guy, just say like Tyreek Hill or what Kareem would do. I did believe in him, but I think, a lot of those guys were going to have just an explosive week like that. So I don't think any of that was a fluke, but I don't expect those crazy numbers like the way we saw from those 3 guys week in and week out. But I do expect them to be a little bit more consistent. I think Alex Smith will be a little bit more conservative, like the way we tend to see him play. But what guys who get it done, like Hill, and if Kareem Hunt could keep that up, I think you're going to see you're going to see a different side of Alex Smith.
Let me take a poll real quick, and maybe I don't want to know the answer to this, but I'll ask you guys. And Orlando, I'll ask you first since it kind of hits home to you. Do you see Alex Smith being more fantasy relevant and putting up more points the rest of the season, 15 games, than Andy Dalton?
No. It could go no. I just think with Alex Smith, they have more of a running game in Kansas compared to than what the Bengals have right now. I know they got Mixon, but you still got AJ Green, you still got Tyler Boyd, you still got Eifert, you still got a couple of those guys. For the Chiefs, yeah, you got Tyreek Hill, you got Chris Conley, you got a couple of those guys, but Andy Reid's known for running, pounding the rock a little bit more. With Cincinnati, it's kind of a mess, is where you don't know who the guy is going to be. So I see them throwing the ball a bit more than Kansas City.
And Andy Reid is also known for not really liking Alex Smith and drafting a quarterback in the first round of this year's draft. Dan, what do you think? Is Alex Smith going to put up more fantasy points the rest of the season than Andy Dalton?
No. I would take Andy Dalton over Alex Smith. It really isn't too close in my opinion, although I wouldn't like either of them if I had to count on them week to week.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm satisfied. That's fine. I'll take what I can get from you.
But I mean, Andy Dalton does have a hole to climb out of. I think he's a negative something right now. So
It is. Yeah, but I'm saying the rest of the season.
yeah, I'm just messing with you, Brandy.
Clean slate. You also forgot to mention John Ross for Cincinnati too. We'll see if he can get in the mix too. But a lot of weapons there. I don't know. I think it's going to be Andy Dalton. But I'm going to do you even one better, Judy Pertins, and take another poll right quick. So, Judy, these are the guys that are available, the quarterbacks that are available right now in our myfantasysportstalk.com fantasy league. And kind of give you an idea of if there's anybody out there you think may be a better play than Alex Smith. Okay. Trevor Siemian, he put up 21. He is available. Jared Goff.
Ugh. Gives me the shivers. 300-yard passing game. Good for you, Jared.
I know, against the worst team in football. Hey, what a flip. What a flip-flop. What a flippity-flop, because the Rams, to me, are no longer the worst team in football. It's the Indianapolis Colts. Flippity-flop. So Jared Goff puts up 19. Mike Glennon is available for Chicago. 12 points. That was more than Tom Brady and Andy Dalton last week. Blake Bortles is out there, put up 10 in a blowout, only 10 points. Come on. Josh McCown is out there. Carson Palmer's out there. Brian Hoyer. And then the rest are pretty much backups. So Mike Vick is listed. But anyway, the rest of them are backups. But anyway, as far as starters, Simeon, Goff, Glennon, Bortles, McCown, Palmer, Hoyer. Yeah, but Dan, what do you think? You're sticking with Alex Smith over all those guys, right?
No, I would take Carson Palmer over Alex Smith.
Really?
Yep.
Well, yeah.
I mean, he had a rough week
David's
one.
out.
But yeah, I would.
Yeah, you're right. If he can stay healthy, and he was just dropped too, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody just dropped him.
Yeah, I don't know who.
It was laying the smackdown. Orlando, who's that? Is that Matt Aguirre?
It's Matty. Yep, that's Matt.
Yep. Just
Matty
dropped
Ice.
him today, Dan.
Gave up on him. What a shame.
With David Johnson out, so he's thinking just the opposite. He's thinking that's going to kill Carson Palmer's production because they're going to start keying in on the passing game, I guess. I don't know, but a little bonus for you. That we're in a 14-man league, Judy. So that's who's left in our league. Trust me, I've looked after Andy Dalton put up those bad numbers just to see if somebody's going to drop him.
Well, yeah, Palmer there. But for the next at least 2 weeks, I mean, you wouldn't take a flyer on Goff at least if you needed the help. I mean, I know it sounds horrible. We got Washington at home, in which they're horrendous themselves, and then San Francisco. I mean, come on.
Well, how about
after
this?
that, you got Dallas and Seattle. But, I mean, I would take Jared Goff at home against the Washington Redskins, which the defense should hold their own against that offense. And then add San Francisco, too.
I like San Francisco's defense. They shut down Cam Newton in the passing game this week one. Goff, I mean, Indianapolis' secondary is so bad without Vontae Davis. You're going to see Carson Palmer, who plays Indianapolis this week, go off for almost 400 yards passing. That's how bad Indy's defense is. And it still get Jared Goff. Like I understand he might improve year one to year two, but it's Jared Goff, man. That's a golden rule. No Buffalo Bills, no Jared Goff on my team. Get out of here, Goff.
That's pretty simple rules to live by right there. Let me throw another one at you guys. I'm not totally agreeing with this at all, but I'm just saying there's hypotheticals out there where you could rationalize this. Blake Bortles and Jacksonville, who put up, 39, 35, 39, whatever they put up, 40.
That's their defense, though.
Their defense.
I understand that. But if the defense is good, you should be getting a lot of opportunities to do things too. So Blake
I don't even
Bortles
think the coach wants Blake Bortles throwing the ball. How many times did Fournette run? That's why I would stay away from Allen Hurns. That's just my opinion.
It only takes a few big plays, though, to have a pretty good fantasy day. You just got to have them. And what I'm getting to is that they're playing Tennessee, who was pretty bad last year. I'm not saying I agree with that because they did get much better, not the same defensive Tennessee Titans squad from last year. I'm just saying you could rationalize that. But he's up there. But anyway, yeah. Anyway, to wrap it all up, Judy, no, Alex Smith will not continue that, but I'm kind of with Dan, I guess, here. Carson Palmer, maybe, out of the guys that are available in our league anyway, which is a pretty deep league, 14-man league. But if you got Alex Smith, I'm probably going to roll with him unless something better comes along via trade. That's the only way you're going to get better there. So thanks for the question. Say hi to Nick and say to Nick that, and I guess, not you, you're probably happy to see Tony Allen go, but tell Nick that we're sad to see that grit and grind era come to an end with Tony Allen's departure. Shed a tear. Let's move on. This is Orlando with the Spurs show. It's not a basketball show, Orlando. This is
you gave a shout out. You gave a shout out to Harry. I think she's a Spurs fan, right? So I'm giving a shout out to Judy. That's it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Judy Perkins. Let's continue the mailbag questions next. You're listening to and watching My Fantasy Podcast from MyFantasySportsTalk.com. Thank you, guys. Brandon Reed, Dan Shaw, Orlando Torres is here for another one. Week 1 wrap-up, NFL season. I'm going to break down what we did, what we didn't do, what we did that we liked, what we didn't do that we liked, and we're going to hear all about it from you guys with these fantasy questions. Number 6 comes from Brandon Owen. Are we seriously even talking about this here? Eddie Lacy. This question comes up again.
Another one of New Breed's guys.
Yeah, that's who Nick got. Nick Pertins backing up to Nick and Judy Pertins. That's who Nick got to me about a couple of weeks ago about Eddie Lacy. I wasn't going to draft him, but apparently Brandon Owen did. Is Eddie Lacy droppable? He's droppable, or I guess he's making a statement / question. Eddie Lacy is droppable. Right. Chris Carson is available, and I wasted a stupid 7th round pick on Eddie Lacy in a PPR league. That probably wasn't the smartest thing. I wouldn't. Maybe I did sell him. Maybe it's all my fault, Brandon knows. But is he droppable? Chris Carson's available. Wasted a 7th round pick. Give Brandon Owen some advice. I don't know whether he won or lost in week 1, but give him some advice to climb out of a hole or even get better, Dan.
Sweet Jesus, yes, drop Eddie Lacy. There's no reason he should be on a roster. 5 carries for 3 yards, and this is New Breed's RB2, solid RB2.
But hey,
5 carries, 3
potential.
yards.
Bad.
He ate more Snickers at halftime than he got 8 yards. All right, drop him. Pick up Chris Carson. End of story. I won't keep going on about it because I lit into New Breed when he was talking Eddie Lacy in the summer. Stay away. Get him off your team. Let him live on the waiver wire. 5 carries, 3 yards. 3.
Oh, can I just say something real quick?
No. All right.
Can I interject? This isn't even about me. You know what this is about? Prestige Worldwide. And that dude's name is Dakota Day, one of our fans. He's still on his roster, so don't talk to me. Talk to the Prestige Worldwide.
Well, I want my team, the people I'm playing against, sure, pick them up. But I'm helping you out, Brandon, not this Brandon Owen. Get rid of him. Pick up Chris Carson. He's going to be the better fantasy play all year.
Orlando, I do believe you have CJ Prosise. You were high on CJ Prosise. You've been preaching CJ Prosise. You picked up Chris Carson, I believe. How do you feel about this? Because I don't want any part of it. I do have Thomas Rawls. I'm hanging on to Thomas Rawls. I'll admit that. Not Eddie Lacy, Thomas Rawls. But I honestly don't really want much of this Seahawks backfield right now because I have no idea what the hell is going on.
No, but I think they want someone to be the guy. I'm not worried about Eddie Lacy. Chris Carson is the guy I would take a flyer on. I might hold on to Prosise another week on 2, depending on what he does, and it probably might not be much. But Chris Carson is the intriguing one. I know it does depend on what Rawls does when he's on the field, but I'm just going to hang on to Carson for a while. I think they got something in Chris Carson.
Can I also just say, if you watch the game, that Eddie Lacy didn't get quality rushes. It was just bad. They were just bad rushes. Okay,
Eddie Lacy quality rush don't exist.
You can't. Come on, you can't just hand the ball off to a guy when the defense is expecting run and run him straight up the middle. And that's the kind of touches Eddie Lacy was getting. It wasn't getting anywhere. It wasn't getting anywhere for anyone.
Yeah, but you look at a guy like Carson. I mean, the runs he got, it was very little too, but he was a bit more explosive compared to Eddie Lacy.
I think it was set up that way, though. When you see Eddie Lacy entering the game as an opposing defense, you probably know Eddie Lacy might touch the ball. You probably know Eddie Lacy might be running up the middle. It wasn't quality runs. It just wasn't quality runs as far as I'm concerned. I don't know. Probably droppable. Yes, if it's me, probably droppable. But I'm just saying, just to be fair.
Good. Just
to be fair,
that's not how you truly feel. You can go ahead and marry Eddie Lacy, Brandon.
No.
You're loving up on him.
Hey, and he did say 7th round, and that's not bad going into the draft, I'll admit. But once the draft actually happened, I probably wasn't drafting Eddie Lacy in the 7th round. I probably passed him up for someone else. But I will be fair about it. And just to be fair to Eddie Lacy, I watched the game, and I don't think the runs he got was quality runs. It's little weak runs here and there against the defense that's totally expecting it. And just nothing happened. But still, that Seahawks backfield is a mess. It's a mess right now. I don't want any part of it. But anyway, if Chris Carson is available, I think we all agree, go after that. Do that. All right, let's move on. Adam Overwood chimes in. I lost A-Rob in a league, that's Allen Robinson. I lost A-Rob in a league where we have 2 flex positions. He was my flex. Would you pick up Tariq Cohen from Chicago, or Cooper Kupp from the Los Angeles Rams? Half-point PPR league here, Dan. What do you think? Allen Robinson is gone. 2 flex positions. Would you pick up Cooper Kupp from Chicago? I'm sorry, Tariq Cohen from Chicago, or Cooper Kupp from the Los Angeles Rams? Or would you pick up both of them if you could?
I would pick up the human joystick, Tariq Cohen. That's I like him, his ability to receive targets a little bit more. The Cooper Kupp I think he was my 3rd wide receiver coming into the draft. I was very high on him. I was very upset when he was drafted to previous said Jared Goff, and I thought that would just kill his NFL career. But, I mean, he's looking like he's being targeted quite a bit. But I still wouldn't trust him week in, week out. I mean, he managed 4 catches and a touchdown against the worst pass secondary in the NFL, the Colts. So, we might see some more targets as the season goes along, but I just think Cohen is a part of that Bears offense now and will continue to be, especially in a half-point PPR league. I mean, he's going to get 5 to 7 receptions every week, and what he can do with it after the catch really makes him dynamic in fantasy.
Orlando, what do you think? Would you be high on both guys, or more high on one than the other, or what?
Yeah, no, Cohen. I just think he's more guaranteed for a heavier workload at Chicago. They need guys there, and I just from what he did, he got a couple of targets, I think, or carries. I think was more than expected, and I think he's doing more than what Chicago originally probably asked him or expected out of him. This guy is fighting for his playing time. That they do expect still Jordan Howard to be their guy. But just Tariq Cohen, because I watched that game pretty closely too, and he was just making something out of nothing, just making guys miss, and you could tell the crowd was really into it, and even Jordan Howard's the only touchdown that he had. It was a handoff by Tariq Cohen. So yeah, definitely, I'm very high on Tariq Cohen. I think he should be the number 1. Hopefully, he got him because I imagine in that league he's no longer there. So hopefully, Adam went ahead and picked Cohen, but I would definitely pick him over Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, I'm with Cohen. He appears to have more upside at this point and could even take over Jordan Howard's spot with his playmaking ability. He's just going to ensure that he gets touches with that versatility. So,
I don't know if he gets Jordan Howard's spot, but I do think he cuts it to his workload only because Chicago is just looking for anybody right now to catch passes and help them keep staying games. So looking at that way, yeah, Tariq Cohen, I think he's going to be more consistent week in and week out.
And it may also depend on how Chicago does in the win-loss column, too, as to who they're willing to afford or throw out there as the touches get less significant if you fall into a hole. We don't know. But interesting, something I just realized, Dan, that the guy you just beat, Darren Coppage, give him credit, although a little bit, because he did draft Tariq Cohen. He drafted him in the 15th round, the last pick, 198 in our draft. Just didn't play him.
Yeah, that's a shame. Shame, Darren. What a shame.
But
Good
see,
job.
shout out, right, Dan? He did do
Yeah.
it.
Oh, for sure. I like it. Because I would have. Well, my team is too stacked to drop anybody, but I would have. I would have dropped somebody if I could for Cohen.
Yeah. Okay.
But I couldn't
So
because he was on a roster.
yeah, I agree. So, but let me just say, can I back up to Cooper Cup real quick? Guys, please realize that the Los Angeles Rams, and let this sink in, okay? The Los Angeles Rams were playing the worst team in football last week. Do not let this go to your head. Do not let Jared Goff's performance go to your head. Do not be looking to pick up Jared Goff all of a sudden. Do not think really, really high about Cooper Cup. You were playing the worst team in football last week. I truly believe that. Dan, who's the worst team in football?
Tennessee. No, Indianapolis Colts. Yep, I'm with you there. As long as Andrew Luck isn't at quarterback. I mean,
I say even when he comes back, they're not going to be competing in the AFC South.
No, but I mean, they'll be in ball games. I mean, that defense is bad. That defense might be the worst defense in football. But if Andrew Luck is back and healthy, I don't think it's possible that they can be the worst team. I mean, he accumulates himself 1 to 2 wins just based on what he can do on the football field when healthy. But right now, with Scott Tolzien or Jacoby Brissett and no Vontae Davis, it's ugly. It's ugly. And Chuck Pagano is going to be out of a job soon.
Chuck Pagano did not sound happy himself after
he didn't even know what team he was playing.
Yeah, he was in a daze. So if not Indianapolis, who is your next best pick for the worst team in the NFL right now?
Jets. I would say Jets are pretty bad.
Jets got the title, don't they? Jets clearly got the title.
Yeah, and I would honestly say if the Bills ever lost LaShawn McCoy, they would be right there too, because do you understand their only other running back basically on their roster is Mike Tolbert? I mean,
I like Mike Tolbert, but not as a second running back, as more of a fullback.
Yeah. Well, he got almost 10 carries last week. He's their second running back. So if anything ever happened to McCoy, the Bills are getting worthy of that spot. Yeah, I mean, there's not too many others that I can think of. Cleveland's improved. Chicago's not as bad as we thought they would be. You never know with Arizona. I mean, with that offensive, Palmer can't get right, but not the worst team in football. So, yeah, I mean, ultimately it's the Colts until Luck comes back.
So who's my favorite sports writer in Indianapolis again, Dan?
Greg Doyle.
Yeah, Greg Doyle. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, the name escaped me at the time, but Greg Doyle. I apologize to Greg Doyle, the Indianapolis Star, Indianapolis fans, Indianapolis Colts fans, that you probably are not the worst team in football. It's got to be the Jets. It's got to be the Jets. But you're right there. You are right there. I'm telling you. Maybe that's my AFC South bias kind of kicking into.
The Jets have a better defense, though, than the Colts, if you ask me. I mean, they got some of these young players. Morris Claiborne, when he comes back. Of course, he got hurt again. That's just like Mo Clay.
Yep. Orlando, who's the worst team in football? If not the Jets, yeah, let's throw the Jets out because I know that's obvious. I think that's obvious. They're clearly tanking for Sam Darnold or Josh Rosen. Maybe no, I don't know. But the Jets are the worst team in football. We'll agree on that. Who's the second worst team in football?
Okay, so we said we knock out the Jets and the Colts. I'm a little worried about Houston. Only, they just lost Brian Cushing today for 10 games because of PEDs. And
that does not shock me. That dude is nuts. If you just watch that dude is nuts.
No, I know, but there was a lot of hype going around the Texas defense, and I know it was only week 1, but they just got absolutely blown out the water by the Jags and the whole quarterback thing. Tom Savage, he had the whole offseason to get things right, and I know it was week 1, but he looked horrendous. And then they got Watson there, so that's gonna hurt Hopkins there. So I'm a little bit worried about Houston, not too far from there. So I know they're panicking a bit. I know they're calling for Watson. But I think that could be another pretty bad team. And I know I had picked them one of our standings, but they're just off to a rough start right now. And not only that, they don't even have any tight ends available right now because they're all injured. So, yeah, Houston worries me and could possibly be one of the worst teams right now in football as well.
Who was one of their tight ends? It was Fedorowicz. Was that
Fedorowicz?
Did you have him, Orlando?
I had him, and I had dropped him. I think I might have. I don't remember who I dropped him for. It might have been for Carson. So not a bad move there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So, Dan, do you hear that? What we're saying is two of the worst teams are in the NFC South. The division that my Tennessee Titans are fighting for. Is that accurate?
I still like the Texans a little bit. That defense, to me, I mean, as long as J.J. Watt can stay healthy, Jadeveon Clowney, I think they got too much talent. And honestly, that offense looked bad for a multitude of reasons. The number one is Dwayne Brown is still holding out, and he's their cornerstone left tackle. Their offensive line looked putrid against the Jags. I don't think they're going to be that bad week in, week out, but with Tom Savage back there and a terrible offensive line, I mean, he's like a 45-year-old Drew Bledsoe that can't escape the pocket. Just looking old back when Bledsoe was with the Cowboys. It just reminded me of that. He couldn't move in the pocket at all. He didn't have any time, and it was just ugly. But, I mean, the Texans, to me, still have a little bit too much talent. DeAndre Hopkins on the outside. Deshaun Watson, I'm a fan of. I think he's not gonna blow the lights off his rookie year, but he's gonna put together some wins. So the Colts, I'm with you. The Texans, I still have a little bit of belief left in there.
Does Deshaun Watson start this week?
Yeah, he's already been named the starter.
Oh, he did. It must have been today then.
Yeah, it was today.
Yeah, he's been named.
That was a very last minute decision. The game is like tomorrow. So,
Billy O'Brien messing with you.
Is he the starter going forward?
I would think so, yeah, unless you see an ugly performance, which you never know on a Thursday night. A Thursday game kind of freaks me out on the road of rookie. They got to really believe in him. But at the same time, I think the reason they ultimately did it, obviously they spent a first-round pick, but Deshaun Watson can actually run out of the way with their terrible offensive line. So he at least has some mobility, so he won't stand there like a sitting duck like Savage did.
Interesting to keep up with the Texans quarterback situation. This is like the revolving door in the endless carousel. We'll see what happens. But thanks for the question. That last one came from, that was a long question there, but Adam Overwood. We kind of spun it off from there, but anyway, thanks for the question. The last one comes from Meyer Young, who is one fantasy player who had a terrible week one that you expect to turn it around. We all know the overreactions are insane this time of year, says Meyer Young. Thank you, Meyer. My Lord, that's the theme of today's show. That's really what the message I wanted to drive home. And so based on overreactions from week one, who had a terrible week one and who's going to turn it around, answer is obvious. Right, Orlando? It's Andy Dalton.
It definitely is Andy Dalton. He starts to get right tomorrow night.
No, he's up there. He'll turn it around from -4. Yeah, but that's not hard to do. But seriously, I think Russell Wilson will have a good game against San Francisco. Eli versus Detroit. Watch out for that with Odell Beckham Jr., I think. And then another giant, Paul Perkins versus Detroit. And Chris Hogan versus New Orleans. Is Chris Hogan healthy? Is he good to go with something going on there?
I believe he is healthy.
Yeah,
and he probably will be targeted a little bit more with Amendola and concussion protocol.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Amendola and, of course, Edelman out, and they're playing New Orleans. So, yeah, I'd say Chris Hogan probably going to have a good bounce-back game if fully healthy there. New England just had a bad week one. Kelvin Benjamin versus Buffalo. Eric Ebron versus the Giants. Eric Ebron had a pretty rough or non-existent first week in a pretty good Detroit Lions day. And then Tyler Eifert versus Houston. So I'm kind of sticking with that Cincinnati Bengals theme. They didn't score a point. So look for them to not do that this week versus Houston. I don't know what's going on in Houston, but their defense is just not scaring me the way it used to. So Meyer Young. What do you say, Dan?
I got two receivers that had rough week ones, but for the season, I expect them to turn it around. Guys that I really, I'm still confident in. One is my cat, Des Bryant. 2 receptions he had one long one, but overall, I think Dak's going to look to him a little bit more. Janoris Jenkins had him locked up pretty good. He still had a high volume of targets, a little bit accuracy issues with Dak, and then just the solid coverage that allowed Dez not to put up too many points. And another guy that I'm pretty high on this year is Mike Wallace in Baltimore. He only had one catch for 8 yards. Jeremy Maclin had a long touchdown, but I still think Mike Wallace will ultimately be that number one wide receiver in Baltimore. Joe Flacco only completed 9 passes. I mean, they didn't need to do anything offensively the way their defense was playing against the Bengals. So I like those 2 receivers to bounce back this season after rough week ones.
All right, Orlando.
It's pretty simple. I got 2 guys too, but the first one is very obvious. It's Le'Veon Bell. I just did he was out there looking like a clown. I mean, against Cleveland, I know they held him in check, but I mean, come on, the guy wants to go out there, miss all of the offseason workouts and stuff, and wants to show up days before week 1. It was, I think he could back it. There was a couple people overreacted about that too. I know they got a tough Minnesota defense at home, but they're gonna have to give him the ball to get Le'Veon Bell going again. And Hunter Henry, I know Antonio Gates is there, but for a guy, explosive guy like that, like he's got to get right. I don't know what's going on with the Chargers, but I expect to turn around for Hunter Henry.
Good pick, Orlando. Dan, tell them what's up with the Chargers. We talked about that today on the myfantasysportstalk.com message board, actually.
Yeah, with the tight end situation.
Right, yeah. Hunter Henry and Antonio Gates.
Yeah, so I mean and they've come out and said this, but they want Antonio Gates to break the touchdown record all time by tight ends, and he's basically going to get more touches and playing time over Hunter Henry until he breaks that record. I think he needs 1 or 2 touchdowns. The record is his, and then they said it's Hunter Henry's job, and he's going to receive the bulk of the playing time. But they are set on giving Gates all the looks and touches early in the season until that record's broken.
And I think
until week 3 or 4, I guess we'll see Hunter Henry be Hunter Henry.
So our own Casey Birch kind of gave up on that, huh? Traded away Henry.
Mm-hmm. But I mean,
if he's not the starter, he's not the starter, and he was getting a pretty good value in return.
Yeah, I like that trade that he made, but ultimately, I own Henry in our league. I'm still going to be playing him. It's going to be a rough couple weeks, I think, and I do have 3 tight ends, so maybe I should take him out. But I still think he's going to be a solid fantasy contributor. The same thing happened last year in his rookie year. He brought it on as the season wore on, so I still have faith in Hunter Henry.
Yep. Definitely the more talented tight end right now than period on the team. So it's only a matter of time before that works itself out. But man, that was a lot of fantasy talk. Woo! I learned a lot. I want to apologize to whoever I offended, on today's show on my responses, and I want to say thank you for submitting your hate because I love it, and these guys too do. So. That's my fantasy podcast. Before we completely wrap it up, let's talk about other stuff on the site. Dan, is there other stuff on the site?
I don't know, man. My head's all fantasy. It's been fantasy driven. I mean, Orlando's been bringing out pieces. I've been busting out some fantasy pieces. Entertainment section is still blowing up over there. Bringing out articles constantly. Kira McCall is one of the editors of the entertainment section, and she's doing a great job. So yeah, I mean, we're still putting out a lot of stuff. It's been mainly fantasy driven, but we're still covering, the baseball, NBA. Sooner or later, NBA is going to be starting again. So that's crazy. But yeah, the site's doing well, and social media. Make sure you give us a follow and like. That's where we receive a lot of our questions from. So find us on Twitter, Facebook, My Fantasy Sports Talk. And yeah, I mean, the site doing very well right now. Very pleased.
All because of our own Dan Schalk. He legitimized it. It's his baby. It's his creation. But he is now a member of the FSWA, Fantasy Sports Writing Association. So big shout out to Dan Schalk. And keep coming back week after week after week. Yes, NBA will be kicking up soon. Can't wait. Got to redeem myself and win that title back from Dan Schalk after what went down last season. We're in the middle of our fantasy football season now. Myself, Dan Schalk, and Orlando Torres are all 1-0 after week 1.
But one of us won't be next week as Orlando and I face off.
No chance
of Orlando
being 2-0. Orlando. So this is your chance to step up, man. If you beat Dan this week, and you come on the show, you're going to have much to talk about next week as you gloat. As you're for sure no longer last place Lando, you're sharing a first place spot, Lando, which is a long title. But
I don't like my matchup either. So best of luck to you, Orlando. But Ty Montgomery, put him on your bench.
Hey, you never know. I might throw a curveball like that. I might throw Carson Wentz. Chris Carson out there. Who knows? We'll find out.
I'll take that. Please do.
Sounds like a challenge. It's going to be a fun season, guys. Appreciate you for all the questions. Appreciate the fans that have joined the league. It's going to be fun with Jim Kiblin, Darren Coppage, Farf Dollar Footlong, all you guys. But it's going to be a fun league all season long. We'll see who comes out on top every single week. We'll be at the end before you know it. Thanks for all the questions, guys, submitted to the fantasy mailbag. And we'll get into a lot more next week. So join us then for My Fantasy Podcast. Join us every single week, of course, live on YouTube. You can check out the replays on YouTube. Check out the replays on myfantasysportstalk.com. Check us out every week on WBLZsports.com. The all-new WBLZsports.com. So many new podcasts there, brand new homepage. So if you haven't checked that out in a while, check it out, WBLZsports.com. And, of course, you can check us out on SoundCloud. So until next week, we'll get you updated on week 2. We'll get more hate. Either I screwed up, Dan screwed up, or Orlando screwed up. Somebody screwed up here, and we're going to get hate mail. So we'll come back, try to figure the whole thing out again on week 2. My Fantasy Podcast. Check us out. So thanks for joining us. Until then, next week, see you later. Peace.